Just over a year since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the two countries are still locked in the struggle. One of the war's wide-reaching effects is a European energy crisis, a squeeze on supply of Russian gas that is critical for heating homes, cooking and generating electricity. Europe had allowed fossil fuel reserves to run low, and as winter approached, Russia reduced its exports of gas. Here's a chart of LNG prices since the beginning of the war to the present. Late last year saw prices skyrocket as Europe scrambled to import LNG in time for winter. Imported gas, particularly from the US, helped Europe through the cold, but led to an eye-watering $1 trillion energy bill in 2022. In a stark difference to the $1 billion a day paid to Russia for gas, oil and coal before the war began, the EU has now almost completely removed its dependence on Russian fossil fuels. Much of this independence has been attributed to a supercharged effort to transition to green energy. Prior to 2022, Europe had for years imported large quantities of natural gas, conveniently via pipelines linked to Russian gas fields. Cheap pipe gas had long kept energy prices low and replaced energy from emission-intensive coal-fired plants. Russia's invasion of Ukraine changed that overnight. Take Nord Stream 1, a pipeline running from Russia to Germany, which used to supply 35% of all gas imports from Russia. In June 2022, Russia cut deliveries through the pipeline by 75%. The IEA pointed out that Russia is using its natural gas resources as an economic and political weapon, hoping that the EU would support the annexation of Ukraine and return volume to normal. In August, following strong support for Ukraine by the EU, Gazprom, Russia's state-owned gas producer, closed the pipeline indefinitely. By the end of 2022, Russian gas sent directly to Europe via pipelines was down 75% from the year before, and nearly 2 months into 2023, there's no sign of imports increasing. The reduction came alongside falling nuclear output due to outages in the French plants and closures of German plants. To round out the triple crisis, a severe drought across Europe led to the lowest level of hydro generation since 2000. How did Europe deal with this drastically reduced supply of gas and energy? Initially, Europe compensated with the use of coal-fired plant operation. Coal use across the EU rose by 7% last year. Some analysts believe that this was a sign of a supposed halt on clean energy. Contrary to this view, wind and solar energy overtook nuclear as the largest source of energy generation in 2022. This graph shows the energy mix since 2000, where wind and solar now account for 22.3% of European electricity. Encouragingly, much of this shift to solar has been driven by consumers. Homeowners faced with higher electricity prices made an effort to install panels as a cheap way to cut their energy bills. The EU ended up adding 41.4 gigawatts of solar power in 2022, a 25% increase in capacity from 2021. That's equivalent to 100 LNG tankers worth of energy, enough to power millions of homes. Bloomberg NEF estimates that this progress puts Europe 6 years ahead of schedule based on previous clean energy projections. To support grid power, many Europeans who installed solar panels on their roofs added a battery as well. Battery storage rose by a record 79% last year in Europe, led in large by the residential sector, supplemented by encouragement from the IEA for Europeans to adjust their thermostats down by 1 degree and a warmer than expected winter. Europe managed to drastically reduce its dependence on Russian gas. Consumer demand for clean energy also saw top-down policy support from the EU. In June 2022, the EU proposed the Fit for 55 package, a plan to cut emissions by 2030 by at least 55% from 1990 levels. This plan effectively converts the EU Green Deal goals into EU law, with specific goals of reducing energy consumption in buildings, industry and transport. Highlights of the package include short-term goals of new energy partnerships with reliable suppliers, including future cooperation on renewables and low-carbon gases, rapid rollout of solar and wind energy projects combined with renewable hydrogen deployment, increased production of biomethane and approval of first EU-wide hydrogen projects by the summer. Medium-term goals to be completed before 2027 include increasing the European renewable targets for 2030 from 40% to 45% of all energy needs, regulatory measures to increase energy efficiency in the transport sector, and a modern regulatory framework for hydrogen. Acceleration away from fossil fuels is top of mind for EU lawmakers, who are now so confident about meeting 2030 emission targets that they have already opened public consultation for 2040. Spurred on by developments in wind and solar, Germany brought forward its goal of 100% renewable power to 2035 early last year. The rapid pace of Europe's transition is an encouragement to a world with less ambitious clean energy targets. Investors looking for exposure to some of the themes discussed in this video, including solar and climate change innovation, can visit our website or click on the links in the description.